Hi, thank you for coming on. Morris, the pasuk says "Al tirguzu b'derech," which means that when one is on the road, one is not to put too much concentration into Havana because Farsham explained various reasons. However, the question is, does that apply today? Interesting question. Do your best because you're a valuable part of this operation here. Okay, Rabbi Sai. So, Shalom Aleichem. I see some new friends here, including Yedidi, Agayin of Shlomo Weinberger. If you open your mic and maybe even your picture, so Rai Panecha, Leipi Lolnu, that would be even a bigger bonus for us. This is an interactive shiur, and certainly want the participation of the senior Talmid Chachamim. Rabbi Sai. So yesterday, Sunday and yesterday, yes, anybody wants to propose the panels, which means, what does that mean? In order to speak back. So, okay, I think that we should promote everybody if possible. I know it's a lot of work for Mordechai, but that's what he does all the time, a lot of work. Before we begin, just a couple of administrative issues here, because we're coming here down to the end. I know not everybody's coming to Israel, but this applies to everybody. First of all, we are still missing for the Chabura Siyum on Moed Katan on next Wednesday night. We are still missing 6 splot. Want to remind me which ones they were, Rav Mordechai? I think they were, can't remember anymore. 6 splot, which,
Do I give it to him?
no, put it in the file. 6 splot, which
Zion through Yud Gimel.
Zion through Yud Gimel. Okay, so for those who would like to participate in the Chabur Siyum, and we'd like everybody to have a little chelik in it, and you can help us out here. We're missing these 6 or 7 blots, Zion through Yud Gimel. Kindly email Dr. Letterreich, respond to him those 6, 7 blot, so we can complete the Siyum. The speakers at this event will be 2 of the Younger Light, the 2 of the Chashav Bagidi Shiur, who are Rabbanim Againim, who have been learning with us for the last 2 years, are Rabbanim Kallah and Elephant. So we're looking forward to a worthwhile experience. We sent out an email yesterday asking that in addition, if anyone wants to come on to hear the Siyum, that will require in addition to Rabbi Kals's shiur, which will be broadcast live streamed back at 11. The schedule next week is going to be changed because in order to try to accommodate everybody, both the people in Israel and the people in America, so we're gonna have to move it back. It'll be at the instead of 11 and 12, the shiur next week will be 10 and 11. It'll be a Hachana shiur at 10 and a shiur kloli at 11. The Rabbanim speaking on these shiur kloliim will be Rabbanim Kaplan on Monday, Weiss on Tuesday, Kallah on Wednesday, and Osban on Thursday. All excellent speakers, and all will be speaking in an hour before each one. There'll be an Hachana shiur. Hopefully we'll get out a schedule to everybody, but just know that that's how it's going to work. On a Wednesday, as I said, there'll be a Siyum that'll be after the shiur, and in order to gauge whether we need to set up the live stream for that, if we get an indication of interest, that would help us. Number 1. Number 2, I see the Siyum issue is on its way to being resolved. Okay, 2 more administrative issues. The 2 Gedolei Adar, since Rav Chaim's not available this year, his restrictions. 2 Gedolei Adar, Rav Againim, Rav Gershon, Edelstein, and Rav Dov Landau have agreed to address us on Sunday. In order to know what sort of a venue we need to get, we need to know, for those who are coming, who is willing, who wants to. It's your rare schus. You don't get this very often. It's almost impossible to hear a shiur from Rabbi Landau. He was here in America for the first time in his life a few months ago, and everywhere he went was packed. So it's a very rare opportunity. And of course, Gershom is the senior Ladar in Israel at the moment. Anyway, we need to know how many people are going to show up in Neibrak Be'erach, and I was asked to ask this question. You can just send back a response for Pesach. I know people generally don't respond to these things, but this is a Negea Nafkamin Ladina because we need to know what kind of venue we need.
Who do we send it back to, the response?
Who is sending this information back to?
Yeah, then we want to go.
Rabbi Pesach incessantly sends out his email address. We could send it back. It's easier to send it to us, and we'll forward it on to the, I'll collate it and forward it on to my colleagues in the.
Who is the us? Who is the us?
Meaning?
How do I send it to you? Via email to whom?
No, so as I said, Rav Pesach incessantly sends out on the chat his email address. There it is again. You can see it on the chat. PS letter.
Oh, okay, that's letter right. Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, it'll flash up during the course of this year, no less than 3 times. So everybody will see it. Okay, that's it. And finally, one last thing. We're still short for our Hachana Satayv donations of our Rabbis Weiss and Kallah. Anybody who would like to contribute, we're inching there, but we made more progress on the learning than we did on the Zilber. So anybody who would like to help us close that gap, please do so. It's a little bit amount of a Hachana Satayv. As we said, it's suggested is 36, but for that we need to get 20 or 30 people to participate. Okay, Rabbi say Adkan. Let's go to learn here now. So we're moving on to a important topic, one of the more lumdish topics in Kriyas Torah, and that is whether or not Kriyas Torah is a chayvas yachid or a chayvas tzibur. L'may nafkamina, many nafkaminas. Where does the lumdus come from? The lumdus comes from the interplay between 3 things: whether or not, how many people you need for Kriyas Torah, number 1. Number 2, what is the methodology by which Kriyas Torah spreads out across the whole tzibur. This is intertwined with another topic of Kriya, but the 2 things work together. And third question is, once we know how much we need, once we know how it works, or at least struggle to figure out how it works, then we can move on to see what happens in cases where you don't have a minyan, or you have people who did hear Kriyas Torah, people who didn't hear Kriyas Torah. All this are the major issues in this subject. Plus, of course, there'll be other ones which are negated to Shmei Kohen and otherwise. So the first place to go is a Mishnah in Megillah Daf Chav Gimel. Mishnah gives a list of those things which require a Sarah. And those are personal Shema, Erev Nei Teva, Nices Kapayim, the Ein Klaren B'Terev, Ein Maftirim B'Navi. Those are the 2 which are most negated to us at the moment. Pachis Me'asara. How do we know that? Minhani Mili, Amrab Chia Barabba, Damakra, Nishtachti B'Teich B'nei Yisrael, Kol Davar Sheb'Kedusha La Yehei Pachis Ma'asara. My mashma, how do we know that? The Tanur of Chia, Asya Teich Teich. Ksiv Hachamik Tasha B'Teich B'nei Yisrael. Ksiv Asam Yibadlu B'Teich Ida. We have sort of a double Gzer Shava. Teich Teich and Ida. Ksiv Hasam Admasa Leida Ra Zeis Malahal Nasara Afkan Asar. Okay, a little bit of a let's get the right attitude. A little bit of an interesting limud that the Chazal were willing to learn an important halacha from Hibadlu B'Teich Ida Zeis, which of course refers to a milsa the Paranusa, because they were about to, Klal Yisrael was about to get whacked with a megefa, but this is what Chazal tell you is the template for a Sarah. So now we understand that Kriyas Torah is Davar Sheb'Kedusha. Why is Kriyas Torah Davar Sheb'Kedusha? So going back to yesterday's limud, hold on a second. So the Machayev and Krisis Torah, as we learned in the last 2 days, are either Limud Torah, Yelchu Gimel Yamin B'Loi Torah, or Kriyas Torah as a tekes. It makes more sense to require a asara if it's davar shebekdusha, if it's the latter, because we all know that you don't need 10 people if it was a pure mechayev of limud Torah. And the fact that Chazal are tying this to a davar shebekdusha is something which we have to put on the table as one of the nitunim to understand in this construct. So the Ran in Megillah on this shtickle Torah, on this shtickle Gemara, makes the connection to the Siyas Kapayim. Sorry, page Ches. The Chsiv, Einaisis Kapayim Pachas Masar. The Chsiv Yisar and Siyadav Al Amba Yivarchem. The Chsiv Kayis Yivarchlas Bnei Yisrael Amar Lahem. Bnei Yisrael Asara Mashma. The minimum shear of Bnei Yisrael is Asara. Kidolfina b'Gemarli davar shebekdusha melchsiv negdash b'sayis Bnei Yisrael. Yeah. Hand it to me here, maybe. Dashi, I'm trying to get a little bit more light here by side, so bear with me a second, because I see the background is very dark. And Dashi b'sayis. What gives me? I'll put it here on the side. Thank you. Let's see if this lightens it up a bit. No, okay, maybe that's better. Dashi b'Seich B'nai Yisrael, says the Iran. Ran says, this is what I said earlier, it's a double Gzer Shav. The Ran says, interesting part. He says that Krisis Torah can't be more chamor than Seder HaTfilah. Krisis Torah is inserted in Seder HaTfilah. Why can't it be more chamor than Seder HaTfilah? Okay, why not? The Ran says that this entire requirement for a Sarah Krisis Torah is the Kantara Dabanan. The Kantara Dabanan, and they were only attacking this with Tzibur, says the Ran of the next shtickle. What do we see, Rabbi? So we see, first of all, Siyas Kapayim requires a Sarah because it says Kaisav Baruch is Bnei Yisrael. Bnei Yisrael requires a number of 10. Krisis Torah needs 10 because that was the Atakana when the Moshe Rabbeinu, when the V'yishem B'nei were attacking Krisis Torah, they were attacking for Asara. Ask the Achronim on the Ran, why did the Ran change his time that was before Gemara? They have Gzer Shava. Called Davar Shebekdusha, you don't press Asara. Plus, A, B, Gzer Shava the Reis Rabbi say. So how can the Ran come along and say the requirement for Krisis Torah is of 10 is only Rabbanan? He's learning it from a Gzer Shava. As far as we all know, Gzer Shava is the Reis. This is
What's the basis for doing a double Gzer Shava?
Gemara Mefreshes, one of the, in various places in Zvachim.
No, I know that it does it, but I'm just trying to what's the mechanism?
So I'm answering you. The word in Zvachim has a complicated sugya, which is called Davar Lam Gzer Shava E Chayzrim Lam Gzer Shava Nat Machlekes Tanoim. And there was a machlekes in whether or not this was a chelik of the Kabbalah Misinai. The Yudim Midas are Kabbalah Misinai. Baruch Hu gave him directly to Moshe Rabbeinu and said, "Go, go be Melamed the Torah with these Yud Gimel Midas." And there's a machlekes in the Gemara in Zvachim, a complicated sugi there. If in fact Davar Alam Gzer Shava Chayzim Lam, when I teach this in Daf Yomi, I use the transitive principle as an example. You ever remember what that is from 9th grade?
It's Lenin Kachim, though. It's not Lenin everything else. Lenin Kachim, where you can do a double.
Are you sure?
I believe so. Just you can't do other things at double.
I'm not arguing with you. If you can bring me a source that it's only limited to Kachim,
But you
then
can't
you have
do
a
a double.
kasha. Then you have a kasha on the Run. But you have to back that up. Show me a place where it says that the machlekes is limited to kachim, and then you have a good kasha. Show me a source. I'm I'm just saying you have to show me a source for that. Okay, I confess that the Sigan Zvachim is since we learned it now is probably 4 years, so I can't remember the exact nuances about peh. I could look it up, but right now it's a little bit zeitig. So we're going to put this on the chat. As you know, we have a Chaverim chat where Pesach is in charge of that, including all the other things is in charge of. So we'll put your ha'ara on it, and if you want to tell us a source for that, and I repeat again, I'm not arguing with you. I'm just saying, please provide a source for that, and then we have a kash on the Ran, because the Ran is telling you that it's not really kash on the Ran, it's kash on the Gemara. The Gemara is before Nishtazai. The Gemara learns this double Zer Shav, not Ran.
But
Right?
this isn't kachim. We're not talking about kachim. We're talking Torah, not kachim. Kachim talking about mizbeach, things like that. For kachim, you don't learn it double. It's based on one thing that we don't.
Oh, so you're saying you agree here? It's not a problem. Here, there's no problem with learning. You're agreeing that it's not a problem.
Yeah, no, not here. It's not a problem.
No, it's not a problem. Okay, I misunderstood you. I thought you were asking a kash on that. Okay, fine,
No.
excellent. Okay. You're saying the machlekes whether or not you can be lame in Gzer Shav is limited to kachim. That's what you're saying.
Correct.
Everybody agrees chutz kachim. Okay, I accept that. Because if the Talmud Chacham tells me something, I accept that. Okay, so the Achrayim have to deal with this Ran, and the template that the Ran uses is Berchus Kahanim, and that's a little problematical. Why is that? So the Rishonim have a discussion as to whether or not there is a mitzvah of Berchus Kahanim is Rami only in the Kahanim, or is it also Rami on the Yisrael? The Iker mitzvah, most Rishonim will agree, is that the mitzvah is on the Kayin to be Mevarech. The Charedim has a famous shita, and it's a mitzvah on Klal Yisrael to be Mizbarech, but that's not the normative shita in the Rishonim. Therefore, if that's the case, if it's only a mitzvah on the Kayin, and it's not a mitzvah on Klal Yisrael, nobody says you need 10 Kahanim to affect Berchus Kahanim. And therefore, it can't be. The reason can't be Davish B'Kedusha Pachas Masara. Why? Because Davish B'Kedusha Pachas Masara is said in those things that require a tzibur of Yisraelim. Kedusha, Baruch Hu. The mitzvah is mutal on every yachid, and now you need 10 yachidim to come together to constitute a minyan, and that is why you require 10. But Berchus Kahanim, the mitzvah is not on every yachid and yachid normatively. It's only on the kahanim. That's the case. We now have to understand the Ran a little bit, and it's possible that the reason why the Ran says you need a saram kriyas Torah is neveya, not from the pasuk which the Gemara brings of Nikdashti. Why? So now we enter into our question. Is kriyas Torah a chayvas yachid, or is kriyas Torah a chayvas tzibur? If the pshat is that kriyas Torah is not a chayvas yachid, but there is the chiyuv on the tzibur if there is a sarah b'nei adam. The kairi b'Torah. I'm going to refine this up here a little bit more, but right now I just want to try to read it into the way the Pnei Maven, one of the recent Achrayim, probably 150 years ago, explains the Ran. So we're going to refine the Chakira in this way, that if there's a tzibur of 10 people, then there's chal, a chiyuv to be kair b'Torah. But what's the nafkamina? If the tzibur already read the Torah, and a whole bunch of yechidim show up, which you'll see is going to be outlined in a famous Lamdasha dialogue in the yeshiva world. Do you need to take a Sefer Torah out for them? Okay, there was a Kriyas Torah in Shul. 10 people heard Kriyas Torah. So all of a sudden, you now have invested this shul with Kriyas Torah the Halacha. All of a sudden, the second minion shows up, and 6 guys have not heard Kriyas Torah. Are they mechuyev to hear Kriyas Torah again? Congregation, the congregation Koil Zoom already heard Kriyas Torah. So why are they required to hear Kriyas Torah again if it is a chayvas tzibur? Okay, so if we postulate they do not, the memela we have havana in the chat in the Ran. Why was the Ran Mishana his reason? And the reason is because the time that you need asara is because this was the takana mi'ikara. This was the original takana. They needed asara, as the lesson of the Ran is the takanta the rabbanon like tikkun al b'tzibur. It was the aside of the takana that you need 10, but not midin v'nigdashti. This is how the Achronim tried to explain this otherwise problematic Ran, and why the Ran was Mishana from the lesson of the Gemara and made it into a Tatakana the Rabban. Let's see a little bit of this inside on page S. Don't want to spend too much time on this, but it is based on the Magen Yibayrim. Magen Yibayrim was a Kadmoin. Okay, right there. In Baram Megillah, any personal Shema. Our grace is with a Samach. Can you freeze it there, please? A nice and kapayim, Pakas Masara. And on line 6, well, a nice and kapayim, custom should accept Nay Sol, if you exert Shavnei Sol Master Shar Mashma. Kasha, Madole Amatamadan, Davish Good, Pakas Masara. I really should have gone. I shouldn't have glossed over the first 3 lines because that's where the kasha is. The kasha is the Ran says, Ein Kar B'Torah, line 3, the Tachana Sacham Likre B'Tzibur. And the kasha is why you just use the lesson of the Gemara of Ein Davar Sheb'Kedusha Pakas Masara. I assume everybody understands the kasha here. The Ran is Meshane for the time of the Gemara, and the Ran says it's a new Takana Rabbanon. What is the reason for this Shinui of the Ran? So the Pnei Maven brings a source that we saw that we mentioned the Magen Yibayrim, and he says it depends. Is there a mitzvah in Yisraelim is baruch or not? Most Rishonim, the Charedim, hold there is not. So Mela, he says there's an afkamina. Shema Kedusha Baruch Hu is a chayvas yachid. Every single person has a requirement to say Kedusha twice a day. Chayvas yachid. Therefore, this happens, I don't know, it happens in my neighborhood. I don't know if it happens in your more organized neighborhood. Guy comes in late, claps, and was looking at Kedusha. Everybody gets annoyed, right? Because they already finished davening. Now I'm going to have to get up again and stand up and say Kedusha, Nachamal. So you have to cut him slack. He has a chiyuv to say Kedusha twice a day. So do a chesed for the fellow, even though it's a shtickle shlep. And that is Kaddish, Kedusha, Baruch Hu. Kedusha, Baruch Hu. Not going to go into Yesh Rabbah now because that's a separate subject. And therefore, that is legitimately Ein Davar Sheb'Kedusha Pachais Masara. But Kriyas, Satira, Satamug, and Yoran, the Bible is different. There's no, just like the Siyas Kapayim, there's no chiyuv on the Yachid Mi Yisrael. So too, there's no chiyuv on every single Yachid because it is a chayvas tzibur. And if the tzibur, karkarot tzibur, rak izi yechidim le'shamru, be'emes ein tzarech like to say b'ter ba'avuram, and then he quotes various sources that preceded him, which say this source. Okay, he then brings interesting shaila, which I guess goes to various dysfunctions in shuls. And he says in the next paragraph, Don't ask me why. I guess it was the second minion came and they were still holding Kriyas Torah, the first minion. And they started davening. So is there a chiyuv delaying again? So he says, Yeshlayim the Karma Torah. Why? Because even according to the Ran, a chelik of the Takana of Chazal is that Kriyas Torah should be embedded in Tefillah. As Ram puts the Kriyas Torah, it's Tefillah. Kach tiknuch and not noch Talmud Torah. Kach tiknuch on the base of Tefillah, Yikra b'Shabbos and Beis B'Hei. Okay, Henry Sefer Chaim, the same Sefer Mishmas Yaakov. The Serchas Chaim cannot be obviously the Rishon because it's called Mishmas Yaakov. And he brings interesting raya. What's the raya? Raya is, Gemara says that the reason for the Machayev of Kriyas Torah is Layelchu Gimel Yom B'Lei Torah. So ask the Achrayna and the Prima Gottesman and others, what about Kriyas Shema? You write Talmud Torah Kriyas Shema so that you have every day twice a day. So he says, no raya, no kasha, as we said yesterday. Because if you remember, we were Medaik and Lashon the Rambam, the beginning of Hilchos Yud Beit Perek Hilchos Tefillah, the Rambam is Mechayev Barabim. Mechayev Barabim. Kriyas Shema is not Barabim. Everybody here has learned Kriyas Shema b'Yachid at one point or so. For no other reason, late at night. Hare, the Ratzal Takin, Shiyil Badu Torah B'Rabbi. So as you can see, Rabbi Sai, we're flitting back and forth between the various Mechayvim of Kriyas Torah. We can't shake loose Talmud Torah. We can't even shake loose Talmud Torah the Rabbi. So therefore, once Chazal, Metakein, Shabbos, Beis V'Hei, even if I hold that it's a Chayvas Tzibor, this is the scenario that the Pnei Maven from the Daily Ungarn came up with, that the second minion guy schlepped in and the first minion was still Kriyas Torah and they heard Kriyas Torah. After Nachum al Ibelain it, yes, because the Takana was Kriyas Torah Barabim and we do it again. Then he says, allude to something we mentioned yesterday, which is, why do you have to make Berachos Torah before the Kriya again? So this is, as we said, halacha of Kvod Tzibur. This is what the Rishonim is saying in the sugya. Im Kain, given the kachas, the conscious body of the Torah, Shabbat Chol, the Talmud Torah in Kitzvah. Aval and Marayv, Kvar Karo, this Balu, Rakov, Yichid, like the consumer, a little bit of Silam, Kain Data, Uvna, Maglaim, to Yitzhak, Kain Etzlay, Pasuk. Okay, Rabbi Sai. Two interesting shilas here. Pnei Maven, but we're using this to introduce the Chakira and as a possible beer in an otherwise troubling run. What does this run have? What does this run have to be Mishana from the Lashon of the Gemara of Nigdashti and tell us that it's a Mezunder Takana, which is only Rabbanah. Rashi is a Chared Mitzvah Deraisa. You want to say it to the Smachta, you can always say that, but not much that way from the Gemara. Okay, so now we have some introduction to this Chakira. In the Ginas Veradim, Ginas Veradim was a great Sephardic going from Rabbani Mitzrayim. Now let me just freeze it here while I tell them a little bit of the background. His name was Raman Marcha Levi, and he's quoted extensively in the Paiskim, even though you would think that it's off the beaten track. And he speaks directly to the Shaila, the intertwining of our two questions. What's the Mechayev of Talmud Torah? Is it Talmud Torah? Is it otherwise? And therefore, what is the yesod of the application? Is it tzibur or yachid? And he says it's clear, going back to yesterday's discussion, that kana of Kriyas Torah, whether it was other Nevi'im, could not have been midin classical Talmud Torah. He says no. You look in the Rambam, and I guess it's no, the Rabbanim Mitzrayim certainly we're going to focus on the Rambam. Rambam says Barabim. So the chiyuv of Kriyas Torah, he says, was a takana of Nevi'im in order to make sure that the tzibur somehow came together to hear Torah. Why? Because it's sort of a halacha of a Kiddush Hashem. It's sort of a halacha of a chizuk, a little bit like Hakel. Was Hakel a din in Talmud Torah? Were we teaching the Ilam, the parshas that the Melech read at Hakel, left after? It was a din of L'man Yishmu, L'man Yiru. We were trying to create a Kiddush Hashem. We were trying to create connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It says again, it's Rabbi. You can see the Lashon uses himself. That's a little bit what Torah. That's a little bit. That is what Kriyas Torah is all about. Yes, you can learn it at home. But we wanted it dafka beknufia, as around as madgish birabim. Therefore, it stands to reason, says the Yinas Faradim, that if you're already lamed, if the entire mechayev is a chayvas tzibur to create knufia arabim, so if a bunch of stragglers show up, but that wasn't the intent of the it wasn't the intent of Moshe Rabbeinu. It wasn't certainly not the intent. That's what the Ran means. Not sure what the Ran means, but Takana doesn't mean the Takana of Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay, so this is where the Tzibur aspect of it comes in, and therefore you certainly do not need to take care of Yechidim here because there's no mitzvah ramya on Yechidim. Okay, let's see here in the Shail, the top cost of Males, Teratim, San Kalik, more than that, Shabbos and Yom Tov. Okay, and then he brings Yerushalmi, and this is what the Shail wanted to say. Look at the last two lines of the first paragraph. Chayiv is Talmud Torah. Says again, it's Radim Nishtazai. Belafiani is Daiti Loi Mechuber. Is the markers not working? I guess Pesach took over. Is your marker working?
No, sometimes the markers don't work. It's a function of the PDF.
Okay. Nistra Darke Hazum.
Yes.
I got it. So we're at the gray sidebar, and he says, I'm going to try to distill this because we don't have time to read the whole thing inside. He says, first of all, we know that you can be Mekayim old kasha from Kriya Shema. Don't tell this to Yamaratzim. And he asked kasha from the Gemara and Brachos on the Flamet Hey, so that your Potter Talmud Torah when you have Parnasa Dangus and Nisan and Tishrei. So you see that you can be Yaitz Talmud Torah relatively easy. What do you need Kriyas Torah for? Then he says, let's pick it up here about halfway through. Im timer, where is it that? Meaning Krok Savai. If it's a Talmud Torah dik halacha, there's a din of layamush, which means you have to absolutely hear Kriyas Torah all the time, every 3 days. Medin Talmud Torah. He says that what does it help that you have it 3 times a week? What about today's Tuesday? Nobody heard Kriyas Torah today. Okay, so unless you wanted to do Purim cut and learn Yaveh Amalek because you're a big mach. Nobody did Kriyas Torah today, weren't you? Talmud Torah. But you Talmud Torah. You like Talmud Torah right now. So that can't be the mechayev. What kind of takana would be a takana which doesn't take care of the problem? And if it's a loyom shtika halacha, and you're not taking care of the problem. Mahiyul nevin b'takanasa. Yavish means 2 types of tmidi ice. So he said this over Rav Gift. The tmidi ice of Always the Tmidiyos of constantly. And not only that, I would add a third. Tmidiyos of Torah ba'amkus. Ba'amkus. So how you become that would just create a Torah. So what's the reason? So here comes this Chiddush where it starts Elul Lafi. Shalei Lein Terber Am Knufia, Press Lashis Yamim. Karen Kallah, everybody went home, took out their art scroll and read Chumash a little bit. Says the Ginas Varadim, that's not what Moshe Rabbeinu wanted. He wanted Klal Yisrael to learn his Torah B'Rabim. Now, why do I say his? Because Zichron Torahs Moshe Avdi, because I'll call the Torah Moshe Rabbeinu's name. It's true. He lent it to us. It's true. If we are mishtasheh with it and we are gain with it, then we get to keep it. If not, he takes it away. Unfortunately, so many Bata Midrashis and Bata Midrashis, Rachmon, no one throughout Jewish history, presumably because we didn't do what we were supposed to do in them. If we learn the Torah, it stays. If you learn Torah b'Shas Chak, it stays more. If you learn Torah in the middle of the day, when you could be working or doing other things, it's certainly worth more. And he comes to the conclusion, Rabbi say, second line from the bottom, Aim low ice about the kind of Latila Yache, Kane Chibakar Yatsakris Tarek, that's kind of a cushion of milk, Bracha of Allah. That's like the kind of view. Okay, there's always a problem with a bracha, and the bracha you always have to worry about bracha of atala, and then he goes on to discuss in your bracha of atala and kriyas Torah. But I'm going to try to keep brachas as a separate set of shiurim. So let's move on to there. The Ran in a another place here in Megillah introduces major battleground, the major lumbership battleground here. I don't know how much we'll be able to get through today, but now we are skipping 1,000 years. I don't know. No, sorry. We are skipping around the early 1300s to Chaim Brisker in the late 1800s. Is 500 plus years. We're going to jump here 500 plus years into Brisk, but for that we need to set forth the major shitais of the Rishonim, which are the Rif, Machlekes, the Balamai, and the Ramban, and the explanation of the Ran, which is ambiguous ma'id. Divrei Ran are ambiguous ma'id and engendered a big conversation, and then we'll see if we get to the loved this morning at like 2, but I'm always wary looking at the clock. With Ilam's permission, I generally go to 12:15 on these shiurim that are not followed by a shiur klali. Tomorrow there will be a shiur klali. Rabbi Kallah will give a shiur. The way we structured it is that he's going to go start with the pre-things of Greece Torah. Tomorrow's going to give a shiur with a subject you probably did not hear about. A full shiur, Tzav, Achnasa, maybe Hagam and Galila. And when we get there, Tishala is going to give a shiur on one of the Shver halachic issues, which is Ta'oyois. What do you do in the Kruyim if there are mistakes? It happens all the time. Generally, when it happens, the Rav actually knows Hilchos Kriyas Torah is not around, and everybody starts scrambling around trying to figure out what to do. This has been my experience. So we'll hear a share in that Indian, which will be very valuable. Okay, let's set down here the Rif and the Ramban and the Balamoyer here. Baruch Hashem, it's not a huge Ramban and Balamoyer, but as you know, learning Balamoyer and Ramban is always difficult. Let's start here with the Rif. The Rif says, Amar Rav, Gilu Bizmana Karnais Biyachid. Shalei Bizmana Karnais Basara. Rav has an interesting shita, and he says that if on Purim, today is Purim Katan, okay? So if it was not an every year, we'd be laying the Megillah right now. Rav says, Bismana, a Yachid can read it. Shalom is mana, which means now not Yudalid for Prazim and Tezvav from Mukafim, because Chazal allowed it to go from Yudalv to Zayin for reasons that you know in the first Sugin Megillah. Then you need Risara. Ravasi, he said, what is this all about? Maybe it's Mashal is Mana, Karnaisa Basara. How could you do that? You need the Sarah to read the Megillah. Above the Chashla Rav, Lahada Ravasi. Ravasi was a Talmud Chava of Rav, even though Rav was senior. Rav left Eretz Yisrael. He learned Rav Ravasi in Eretz Yisrael, then it was Eil Bavel. And Rav was Cheshish to shoot Ravasi and Yunasara no matter when. Says the Rif. Rav Agaf, the Chosher Rav, Lahada Ravasi, Kamal Karav. Rebechan and Koyik Vase. Rebechan and Megillah Ksub, Naksum Liatzim, Leamral, Bitsibra, Yachid, Yatz, Shmin, the current ice of Yachid, Karav, Amras Man, and current ice of Yachid. Adkan Divrei Harif. So the Rif's halacha is that a current Megillah Ksub, Naksuvim, Bitsibra is Layatza, but Yachid Yatza. But there is some possibility, according to Rav, to be carried this b'yachid. Says, and the Raya is from Yechanan. So, says the Rif, I'm passing like Rav, and you can read the Megillah b'yachid. Comes along, what's the Raya from Yechanan? Comes along the Balamoyer. The Balamar says, Nishtazoi. The Balamar is Chelik in the Rif, and he's Deicha the Rai from Yechanan, and he says, everybody holds the Yevid Yaitza if you carry B'yachid. And the Machlaikis in Rav and Ravasi is only Lechatchila. And he says, the Raya that you Yaitza B'yeved, B'yechidus, I'll bring you a raya. Look at the Mishnah Megillah Daf Chav Gimel. It does not say. We'll get it inside in a second. Just hold there for a moment. It does not say in the list of these things that are require a Sarah. Megillah is not there. Eisen a raya. Can't get a better raya than that. If there was a chiyuv of a Sarah of Mikra Megillah, why does the Mishnah say so? Doesn't say so. It says so. Kriyas Torah doesn't say Megillah. Okay. I'm supik if we can learn the Ramban and the Balamoyer from the Ran. Let's do it the right way. Okay, I'm going to edit the Balamoyer and the Ramban quickly, and then I'm going to see how the Ran stells back this Ramban and the Balamoyer. So make the Mar cotton bigger, please. There's the Balamoyer. We don't agree with this. We don't agree with this. There's a Bazunder Halacha P'Sumanisa, which is not applied to any other case besides Megillah. Avo. In Karbi Yachid, Yivakal Yatza. Zman Shlei Bizman. Did you ever do Yaitza? Teda, I bring you a raya. The light to Nilam Esnisa, Eisen a raya. The mission of Chav Gimel does not include Mikra Megillah. So how come it doesn't include Mikra Megillah? It doesn't have Megillah. How can there be a Chiv Chavisar of Likla Megillah? Michte Mesechus Megillah Kamina, Mali Hashem Megillah. You can say, Ich weiß. The mission overlooked it, learning Megillah. How could it not be? That was about Amayle Isva Minela Rabasi. Lavade the Kol Alma Mikara Biyachad Yatza Shlei Amro El Hider Mitzvah Leprasume Nisa. Dachen Karmin and Karnaisa Basara. Lermin and Karnaisa Basara Ella Basara Shmami no the Mitzvah Lechatchila Lemevet Hachiv La Dure Abeyasara. Yavid Mikara Biyachad Yatza. So the Balmayer is not impressed with the Rif. He's more impressed with his raya. The Mishnah doesn't say it. And he says, you are absolutely Yaitzer. Says Ramban, sorry, Rabbi Nizrachia, I don't agree with you. Why? What's your main raya? Your main raya is from the Mishnah, the Lakuna, the Mishnah. I use that word just to impress Snyder as much as I can. The Mishnah doesn't mention that there's a chiyuv of Asara Megillah. So that you don't need it. Says the Ramban, no raya. Why? Let me say it outside because the Balmar's the Chametz is hard to learn. Inside, I'll pick out a couple of lines. Why? Because the just hold it for either it is. I'll pick out the line in a second. Why? Because the Mishnah is only telling you those things that are chayvas sibur. And a chayvas sibur, by definition, because Nagdashti requires a sarah. Or maybe, and here comes a very big rub, Raiv Tzibur. Very important thing, Raiv Tzibur. Masha increase in Megillah is a chayvas yachid, which means every yachid is mechuyev to the Megillah, the same as mechuyev to Kriya Shema. And therefore, the only reason for Asara is to be marbe subanisa. That's a pasha to say. The Mishnah is not required to tell you that because we're not telling you the halachas of subanisa in this Mishnah. We're telling you the halachas of chayvas sibur, and Megillah is chayvas yachid. That's the milchamas Hashem. Hashem b'shmei Amar Kais. Hashem b'shmei kol chayvas sibur hey. And ela b'mchuyav medavar. Av Megillah kishem tetzibur chayiv kach kol yachid v'yachid chayiv shleikara tzarach subanisa. Ben shiyatzu hein shalayatzu karim basar leitzi yachid. Bashkim l'am mitzvah. Let's see how the Ran explains in the upper left. Explains the back to the Ran. Explains this like this. Says, slows down. Move the page down. There you go. I'm doing this fast because we already saw this. The machlekes is only b'diavad l'chatchila. V'raya davar line 4. Mimash leimana b'megillah isim shem b'sar. I'm saying that by some shema. Ban kasher shein zuraya. Cholis and daf kachashva is chayv tziburhem. Nice home kein asara. Rub mechum b'davar. Sham der v'tvarcho. A megillah bin asara el mishum parsumei nitza. Okay. So the Ran explains the Ramban. What do we take out of this, Rabbi said? What we take out of this is Ramban is telling you that Mikra Megillah is a chayvas tzibur, and l'chayra that would come out that the antithesis of that, which is the Mishnah, which includes Kriyas HaTorah, is a chayvas tzibur. It seems to be pretty much open and shut. That would seem to be the end of a chakira. Turns out that this is not the case. Nechalkul b'zeh gedolei Yarchei hayeshiva. Reb Chaim Brisker brought in many places. The one that we have here, don't turn yet, because I have to explain. Don't turn yet, because I explained it outside. Don't turn yet, please. Go back to the round. Okay, freeze it there. The reason I do that sometimes, freeze there, is because my experience from a listener, if you start reading it, sometimes a nuance is lost here. So let's leave it here at the Ramban for a second. Let me tell you a little bit of background here. So Kipshuta, the Ramban is telling you that it's a chayvas tzibur. Kriyas is a chayvas tzibur, and Megillah is a chayvas yachid. And therefore, all these questions as to whether or not a yachid is mechuyev to meet mitametz, to hear Kriyas HaTorah, Shalai b'zman tefillah. Even b'zman tefillah, maybe you can stay home. Look at the shul in your neighborhood. What's your neighborhood in current times? That's a bushit. In the Altaheim, if you had one shul in the Stadt, okay. However, you remember this shul, they laid, maybe it's all these are already sub details, but Chayr Rabban is telling you that it's Chayr Tzibur. Like Reb Chaim Brisker nicht sei, and as I gehalten, Rabbi Prushner. Rabbi Prushner, his last name was Feinstein. He was Reb Chaim's Mechutin and Rav Moshe's, I think uncle. Moshe's uncle, a great uncle. I don't think it was his grandfather. Moshe's father's name was David. He was and that's how the Feinsteins and the Soloveitchiks are related. He was Chaim's Mechutin, and the Rabbi Prishna and his Sefer Lichslio learns the Ramban Kipsut. Ramban says, what are we talking about? Chaim says, Nishtazai. The problem is, Chaim has to overcome this lesson of the Ramban. Chaim held that it was a Chayvis Yachid. But it's and therefore, very macron. But it's a Chayvis Yachid, which Chazal said, this Chayvis Yachid, unlike other Chayvis Yachid, you can be Chaim by saying Krishma in your house. No one's going to say you're not Chaim the mitzvah of Krishma Midaraisa Yachid. Maybe you won't get to Berchais Krishma, you're going to get Krishma. Not so Krisater. Krisater is a Chayvas Yachid, which requires a Sarah. And therefore, Chaim was very makbid until today, in base Brister, very makbid, even if they daven be Yechidus. I'm not going to go into that, but even if they daven be Yechidus, they, as you know, they go out to hear Krisater. And you'll go to Zikr Moshe at 2:00 in the afternoon, and they are Kriyas Atayras. For those people who daven very long in the morning and they have to have Mechidus or whatever cheshbon, but Kriyas Atayras is a Chayvas Yachid, which can only be Mekoyim in a Tibur. As I heard Reb Chaim gehalten. Reb Chaim had to travel between Brisk and Varsha, because Varsha, already in time Reb Chaim, is where all the communal activities took place, and where the medical facilities were. He would get off the train, stop at some derfala in between Brisk and Varsha. It was a 3-hour train trip or whatever, and he would be makbid to hear Kriyas Torah. Sometimes he was makbid, as they are today. In the homes of the Brisker Shivas, there are Kriyas Torah. I can tell you many stories, certainly about Rav David Soloveitchik, and which who's on Huggis I now I'm familiar with because of the concentration that we put upon that in the assurance safe is occurring. People have asked me, so I'll tell this to you. It's now available. Anybody needs a copy can get one if you live in the major metropolitan areas in this farm stores. If not, legalize and we'll send one to you. There, everybody understands that they davened by a Yechidus for whatever reason. They're always makbid on. However, this has to overcome the run. So how do you overcome this run? So this is brought in various different places. One of the earliest sources of this is a Sefer Karn that was put out actually by a friend of mine, Rav Aaron Drazen in Montreal, but there are at least 10 other sources that this Reb Chaim is brought down in. We'll see how his Talmud Baruch Ber discusses this issue before we break here, hopefully. Look into the next page now, we can go to the next page. Das Agra Chaysa. The Chayvas Kriyas Atayra Chayvas Hayachid. LDF shall, freeze it right there. LDF shall Akaim Mitzil Basara. Talmud Dakar Kriyas Atayra, Philim Yamshain Sailor Rekevet. He was on a train trip. Rabbi Prushner now. What's his raya? Rabban says, "Ein person al shema." Okay. But God Rabbi Harris the Ramban Lagan Reb Chaim Achagrach Pir Dvarim Afafishi Tasai. It raises the mystery, all very nice. Reb Chaim refused to accept this raya, but the Ramban says so. So the onus is on Reb Chaim and his Talmidim to try to explain how we can get around this Mefursha Ramban. More than that, Chai Adam brought in the Bir Alacha in Kuf Mem Gimel as a shaila exactly on point. If there are people who did not hear Kriyas Torah, if you take out a Sefer Torah to relane, second the schleppers, maybe you need 10. Who mechuyev b'davar, famous shaila the Chai Adam. The Bir Alacha brings his Chai Adam and he says, "What do you mean? I have a Ran. Ran quotes the Ramban. I don't know why you have to quote the Ramban through the Ran. It's right there in the Muhammad's. That Rayiv Atzibur should not, that did not hear Kriyas Torah is sufficient." Let's see the Bir Alacha inside. Ein kind of entire Pachs Masar says the Mechaber Gedailim B'nei Chayrin. The Mischilu Basara. Sorry, whenever I say Bir Alacha, I always forget to mention this to my partners here. We always have to, if we can, start with the Mechaber for obvious reasons. Ein kind of Pachs Masar Gedailim B'nei Chayrin. Opposed to Avadim, Meshachar Eved. You all know the Gemara. Mischilu Basar V'yatz B'tzasan Goimrim. Said the Bir Alacha B'chai Adam. Stop it. Yes, aids of Neam, so some Akriam would lurkus in a pampas free love. The actually technical Kishakal, Asarim Chayav Makriya. Baharani Godoil Echod, Shemafurish Baran, Beruvam Shalekaro Sagi. The Feir Sharan, which says the Ruban Shalekaro is sufficient. So, where is this Ran? Where is this Ran? We haven't seen this Ran yet. We saw the other Ran. The Ran talks about, brings the machlekes between the Balamoyer and the Ramban, but have we actually seen a Ramban directly on point? So that's problem number one. Problem number two, what does Reb Chaim refer to? Problem number two is, how does Reb Chaim get around with his Mahalach that it's a Chayvas Yachin, which is only Mekuyim Basara? How does he get around the lesson in the Ramban? So this has spawned a great bibliography in the Torah Belt. Michael Lefkovich, Kallah Racha. He was actually an American Gadol because he was a Talmud Muvik of Shlomo Hyman, and then he moved there to Israel and became one of the Gedolei Adar. So he has a sefer which they put out. I don't know if he put it out himself or his Talmud put it out, but as a sefer called Darkei Chaim. And it brings the story here, and he gives a little bit more color to the story. Everybody likes stories. So here you have the whole dialogue here between Reb Chaim and the unknown Shoyel. There's a lot of briskology. Freeze it here. Who this person in Lodge was it Rabbi Chaim Meisels or not? Good shaila. Agrach is dam and Pavel Lodge. Okay, Asher B'Poilin. Why do they have to add Asher B'Poilin? I always think that's an infra dig because Poilin Dish Lita, so they had a different malach of Limud Torah there. Even though I've already told you numerous times that at this point in time, a lot of the svaris and methodology, Nezer and Chaim overlap. Anyway, everybody in Lodge were big business. Like Lodge was a very wealthy industrial town for the Jews. The Jews controlled the entire clothing. Everybody knows this: the entire clothing business in all of Poland, which was centered in Lodge. And Chaim needed a minyan to Kriyas Torah. Stami daven b'chidus at home. I don't know exactly. So the fellow in the shul in Lodge said, right, minyan shal nashos taran shom es Kriyas Torah kvar yesh. And therefore, what's the problem? I have 6 people who didn't hear Kriyas Torah. Let's bring another 4 guys who are hanging around, and we have a minyan. So he says, and Chaim says, not so fast. The Chai Adam, who was taken very seriously in the Torah Welt as a Shaila. And Kol Shem V'Kristav Yesh Roiv Min Shalei Shramu, Mutler Kartzayid Pam B'Shvila. Well, you need 10 people who did not hear Kriyas Torah. So that Talmud Chacham said to the Grach. The Grach actually, most stories you'll find that there was an uneven fight, but here there was a Talmud Chacham. He's all my Chabarat. The Ram says beferish that it's a Chayvas Sibur. Chaim looks at him and says, "Nishtaz Aran." The guy said, "Well, what do you mean Nishtaz Aran? I'm going to bring you to Ran." So the rabbi went to the Arayna Svarim and he read in the Ran. The Chalais and the Chayvas Sibur. Okay. Says the Reb Chaim, you're reading the Ran wrong. And let's see how Reb Chaim reads the Ran. On the paragraph like Kach. Rambam, a freeze. Ramban Kasav She'ein Zu Raya. The Chalais and the Kachashvas and Chayvet Sibrahaim. Vein Isim Ellen came Basara. Kama, says Reb Chaim. Sick! Insert a comma. And instead of reading it, Isim Elam came Basara, Ruba Mechayavim, says Reb Chaim, Ruba Mechayavim has nothing to do with Kriyas Torah. Ruba Mechayavim is Kadosh Baruch Hu, and not Kriyas Torah. I'm putting in a semicolon here, not a psik, a semicolon. And therefore, in fact, Kriyas Torah, which is a Chayvas Sibur, you need a full 10, and therefore 6 guys, which not here, Kriyas Torah, not sufficient. So he says, Chaim said to him, you think I know all the Rans by heart? Probably did. But he wanted to make this stop. He wanted to make the Rav feel better. He said, I didn't know all the Rans. I don't know all the Rans by heart, but the Chayadim did. And if the Chayadim blind by Tzarech Chiyun, that means he didn't see this Ran. Can't be. Can't be. It can't be then that the Chayadim had a Tzarech Chiyun and he paskined Nishvi the Ran, or the Ran has a first stick of psak that you need 10, about first stick of suffix. Can't be. Al Karchach, you have to learn the Ran in a different way. Now that is Chavetz Chaim, as we saw, not agree with this. Chavetz Chaim not agree with this, and the Bir Lacha, he learns Kipshutai, that reads the Ramban the way the rest of the world reads it. And then he says, this is some Talmud of Rabbi Yehuda you can see from the last 4 lines. It's a Haisav Meir Rabbi Shlita. That's Rabbi Yehuda. This is one of those transcription books of what he said. So Yashav Pam basically going to Reuven Katz, Rabbi Shal Petach Tippa. Tippa is Rabbi Shal Kfar Ganim. I have no idea what Kfar Ganim is. It's a yeshiva somewhere in Israel. Rabbi Tziviak. Tziviak was a Talmud of Chavetz Chaim. His children lived here in America. Asher Yasha Sham Afu. Shagadol, I think Tziviak survived the war. Shagadol Zeh Shahara Divrei Haran LaChavetz Chaim. Now we know what it was. None other than Moshe Lubdinsky. Asher Kiein Kirayisha Yeshiva B'Shivasai Shel Chavetz Chaim Berad. What was he doing in Lodge? Good kasha. Nice. Maybe he went to collect money in Lodge on behalf of the Chavetz Chaim. But Moshe Lubdinsky was the Rosh Yeshiva of Radin, and he read the Chavetz Chaim, he read the Ran like his Rebbe, the Chavetz Chaim, did. I got my music Reb Simcha ben Lubdinsky is his anical or anical. So we have a little bit of a connection. One of our Magidei Shiur, steady Magidei Shiur, and now you have a full picture of the story. Okay, Rabbi Sai. So it's 12:10, and now I have a shaila here because this is followed up here by a shtickle in the Birkas Shmuel, which requires even Rav, and it'll take, in order to do it justice, because when you learn the Birkas Shmuel, first you have to unpack the language, which is always a little bit problematic. So I'm going to give that a little break here. We're gonna stop here in the middle of the Brisker, the Shalshelis here, because Rabbi Baruch Ber is properly a Yerush of Rabbi Chaim as his Talmud Muvak. We'll learn Rabbi Baruch Ber tonight at 8 o'clock, and then we'll go to see how Deli Peske's Manenu from Zom to Moshe approach this subject. So we leave it as Rabbi say, just to want to give a 2-minute chazara here today. First of all, let's go through the administrative issues. First of all, we still need 6 or 7 black and white cotton. Fill in your blanks by sending it to the aforementioned of Pesach Hatzadik. Second of all, we need information Rabbi site. We need to know how many people are there coming to wish to participate in Bnei Brak. We need to know what sort of size venue we need. Number 3, what was number 3? Number 3 was the Karsa type to Rabbis Weiss and Kallah. Oh, and number 4 was another administrative question. We would put up the live stream of the Siyum and then the Rasha is there for those who can't come, to make sure that everybody gets administrative. For that, again, there's just only going to be 2-3 people. It's a big issue to arrange it that way. So we'd like to have at least 10, or at least a Reva V'Tzibur, or something like that. So if you would be so kind, I know people generally don't respond to these requests, but if you're so kind as to let us know. The whole point of this, Rabbi say, is that we are aware. Before you go, just tell you we are well aware that not everybody was able to make it this year for obvious reasons. But we want to try to keep the kesher between everybody, because you got to think ahead. We got to think about next year. So we want to keep the kesher with everybody. And those of you who couldn't come but are learning together every day, and if you're not learning every day, certainly join us every day. And if you're not, we'd like you to be able to feel as a part of the tibur, and therefore we're trying to calibrate it. That everybody should be able to participate in the Shiur, certainly, and even in the Drashais, that Siyum is l'chvaid the Rabbeim, which we brought 2 down, Rabbi's Kallah and Elephant, and l'chvaid you blamed him. So we would like certainly.
What is the schedule for Sunday in Bnei Brak?
So the schedule Sunday in Bnei Brak is still in formation, because we are dealing with 2 Ziknei Deladar, which you look at the average age is at 94 Knainahara, so the Alabay the delay Mashiach. But the program will be in the evening. We'll come from the airport. Everybody lands more or less, if leaving Motzei Shabbos, Be'erach around 5:30, between 5 and 5:30. Let's assume it takes an hour and a half or whatever. I was there a couple of weeks ago. Obviously, depends on the volume, and I'm sure the volume. The new business with having to take this test to get out of the airport adds a half hour to the mess to get out. Okay, so we figure that if everybody lands between 5 and 5:30, hopefully there will be no delays and all that. So we figured by 7:30 everybody could easily be in Bnei Brak. So the program will be sometime between 7 and 7:30. We're going to try to see if we can have contact with both Mar and I, Rav Gershon, and going Rav Dov Landau. The exact timing, and of course the venue is dependent on what you tell me. I need to know whether it's going to be 30 people or 100 people. So that makes a difference. 30 people fit into people's houses. 100 people requires a public venue. That's the issue we're struggling with. Any information that we get will be helpful. Okay. An email, hopefully with some clarify, will go out tomorrow, latest Thursday. So before you leave, you'll be able to know. Yes, you got a kasher Shlomo question, a comment? No, you lean forward as you want to say something. Any other questions?
Gottesman, it's
Yes,
Morris. Is there transportation from the airport to Bnei Brak to Yerushalayim, or are we doing it on our own?
I think the way we did it, we did not transport you from the airport. Shlomo Weinberger just reminded me, we did not transfer people from the airport to Bnei Brak because people came on different flights, right? But we did offer transportation from Bnei Brak back.
Right.
But also that depends, right? Am I right, Shlomo?
Yes.
Yeah, but that depends on Nyla. There's going to be
Got it. And there's a place we can. we can throw bags or something wherever it is. Right? He's coming in with
Yes,
everything.
yeah, I mean,
I mean, it's schleppy, but
I think
yeah,
that-
that's,
Shlomo,
What
I
we
think they
do-
had the buses and they put the stuff on the buses right away.
perfect.
no, but when you get to Bnei Brak and there's a bus, you put the stuff in the hold of the bus, right? That was the shot? Yes, remember
Yes,
correctly?
yeah. Yes.
Perfect.
Okay, well, that
Thank
means
you.
we have to have a bus. In order to have a bus, we need to have enough people for a bus. So
Understood.
all this stuff has to come together. The issue right here is we're dealing with Zikanim, so you understand all that. Plus, we unfortunately lost Rabbi Zilberstein live because of COVID. Everybody's still very careful there, and everybody was sick. All these yeshivas. There was a eerie thing about a month ago. Every single senior yeshiva, without exception in Israel, got COVID. That was the bad news. Good news is that Baruch Hashem, everybody survived because it was Omicron was mild, as we all know. Okay, Adkan, I don't want to tread in the territory that I'm not a bucky on, so we'll try. The bottom line is we'll try to get information as quickly as we can. We'll work on it. They say Ramesh and the Rav need to know two things: my phone number and Hilchais Torah. You mean the mistake, right? Yeah, happened. I had a Krias Torah last week. The guy started in the wrong place last week. Mamish, same area, all the shilas. We'll get to hear about that in next week. Okay, tomorrow there'll be slight the different schedule tomorrow morning because yes, we'll start at 11 o'clock, but I'm not going to go after 12 because Rabbi Kallah is going to come on to give us a shiur. Anybody's looking from Brooklyn taking some money to someone in Bnei Brak, please call text. Okay. Rabbi say, Adkan, any other questions that I probably can't answer, but it's you can always write them to email to Pesach and he forwards them to me and I can always try to answer them tonight, etc. Everybody have a good day. 8 o'clock.
Thank you.